It's a new way, a new wave, not going back. Living here. It's a new way, a new wave, not going back. Living in the black.
When someone decides that, okay, I have a gift to bake. I have this idea that I want to make this company. I want to create this company. The first thing that they're going to do is probably go on, they got to come up with a name. So they come up with this fancy name.
Yeah.
Maybe the name of their mama, papa, or their son, right? That has nothing to do with the brand. Then they go on sunbiz.com and they go ahead and incorporate the name because they think they're protecting it. Another misconception. So they go ahead and do that. Then they go and get their business cards and they want to get those cheap and free. So they go to vista.com and then they get these business cards to go, I'm in business.
Right.
Then they come to me and go, hey, you do marketing? Hold that. And then I'm looking at the card like, take it back. Well, because you've already done the branding process, but you've done it wrong.
Right. So branding at its very core is the emotional response a person has with a product or service or person. It is an emotional response. It's not a logo, it's not a color palette,
Right.
It's not a font, it's not a name, it's the personality, the core of what that corporation is. If you want to do this at home, if you have a small business, I highly recommend this exercise. Take a piece of paper or get on your computer and write a character sketch of your company.
Character sketch.
Is your company male or female?
It's good.
What does she wear? When she goes out, when she walks into a room, or he walks into a room, what do other people say? What impression does this company? Think of it as it sounds schizophrenic, but it's a completely different company. It's a completely different personality. There are some business owners, like when I first started my business 10 years ago, that did not separate my personality from my company's personality. And that works really well when you're one guy in business working out of your garage. But when I started hiring people, it became problematic because they were incapable of being me.
Right.
So when you think about who your company is, what that company's core values are, what that character sketch looks like, you have to build it into the future, a destination brand, and work every day to live up to that. Your brand informs your product. Your brand informs your service. You understand how you're supposed to do things. If I'm a cutting-edge company that's technologically savvy, and that's part of my brand, I better have the latest and greatest technology, shouldn't I? And it better work.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But so many, if I'm supposed to be buttoned up, and I'm buttoned up, and I am knowledgeable, well, I better sound knowledgeable when I open my mouth. And I better look buttoned up when you meet me. If I walk into your office, and my clothes are hanging off me, and my hair's all disheveled, and I look terrible, then I'm not buttoned up, and I'm not knowledgeable. So it doesn't matter what comes out of my mouth after that. They're already forming your brand. And that's the other thing that should scare people is you don't create your brand. They create your brand. You create the atmosphere in which they will experience your brand. So if you hand somebody a business card, you better make sure does that business card match up to what your brand is. And if you have somebody answering the phone, or if you're answering the phone and going, yeah, it's Tom, that's not going to cut it.
Right.
Unless that's your brand. If your brand is
That's
that
your
you're a
brand.
schlep, if you're a schlep, then hey, good for you. I'm sure there are a huge target audience for schleps, but you know.
Gotcha. So what we're going to do next is we're going to bring in our special guest, and what we're going to do is we're going to make this thing real. We're going to tie this brand thing and make it real. See, it's one thing to think about this thing from a theoretic standpoint, and then it's one thing to take a brand and actually walk them through the process. So I am absolutely excited that our guests are in the studio. Right now, you're listening to Inner Black Radio. When you return, the next voices that you will hear will be that of Nubian speaking and Rebecca Butterfly Vaughn.
It's a new way, a new wave, not going back. Living here. It's a new way, a new wave, not going back. Living in the black.
up. Welcome back. You're listening to Inner Black Radio, your personal entrepreneurial and small business hotspot. I like that. Yo, listen, stay plugged in. Listen, each and every Wednesday afternoon we are here at 4 p.m. But right now, later for all of that, right now in the building, Nubian speaking, and Rebecca Butterfly Vaughn is in the building on the mic. They looking good, they smelling good. I'm excited. I'm snapping. I'm toe tapping.
Rewind.
Rewind.
We just said
We don't
everything.
do the snapping.
Well, don't do that?
The rewind. Yeah.
What up?
Yeah.
The myth of
Rewind.
the snapping, and I have to say
This is Rebecca speaking. This is Rebecca speaking.
Yeah,
Yes.
she didn't even.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen out there in South Florida and on the internet if you're listening. Trust me, this is going to be the best hour in radio experience.
She is
probably
really putting
today
us on
for
the
this
spot.
week.
Really?
Yeah.
So Rebecca, I just want to know. Let's start from the beginning. How did you get started?
Been penning poetry for 32 years. Came on the poetry scene in 1997.
She's
32 years.
Yeah, I'm 42. And actually, it was interesting because I started on the poetry scene a week after Oscar Thomas had passed. He was a well-known and well-renowned artist here in the community. And what was interesting is I would always have like peers or stuff like that that would come over. And they would do to me the same thing that, God bless and rest her soul, Maya Angelou's boyfriend did at the time. He would read her journal and say, hey, Maya, what are you doing? You sitting on this? Because just like her, it was my escape. Nothing to share with anybody. So I go in to, pay my car insurance one day, and my agent was on the phone, but she signaled me, sit down. So I sat down, and naturally, when you're sitting across from somebody's desk and you're waiting, your eyes gaze on what's on their desk, pictures of their children, da-da-da. So I noticed there was a baby blue flyer, but I saw the word poetry upside down, so I signaled, and she showed me. Looked at it, it was for an open mic that had just started the week before on a Wednesday night. So when she got off the phone, she said, this is why I told you to wait.
Oh.
And I've been doing poetry since May of 1997. I went full-time in August of 2002.
Wow.
And
Full
will
time.
never look back.
Okay, well, we're going to get into your brand and we're going to get into your business in a minute. But right now, Nubian speaking, you are not new to radio,
No.
right? You're completely at home here.
Yes.
How did you get started?
Actually, my show is tonight, Saturday night.
That's a plug. Was that a plug?
There you go, good girl.
Anyway, you said how
What
I got
time was that?
started.
9? Right here.
Yes, very, very interesting topic.
I'll be listening.
Oh, wait.
Okay,
Before you go there,
uh-huh.
let me just say this.
Mm-hmm.
This is a, see up there? See that what I say right there?
I know,
the station
I know,
that puts Jesus
I know.
Christ first. Gospel Network.
I know.
I just want to throw it out
This is
there.
why, yeah.
There's, amen.
Mhm.
So how did you get started?
I don't laugh, but I started as an MC. I was a rapper. The
Oh.
first time I heard MC like that,
Oh.
I was 11 years old. And what I would do, I would write. I always wrote. So my sister would hear me, and she's like, oh my God, you sound like her, or whatever. And I'm like, child, stop. So basically what I did was I was well known in Miami as a female rapper. As time passed, you get married, you have kids or whatever, I then continued to write. It then I discovered poetry, I say about, I want to say 2006. And from then on, once I don't think it was Will Spot that was the first place I went. I'm trying to think of the one that was in Fort Lauderdale. I can't think of the name. But I
Strawberries.
decided to go in and nervous. Went
Okay.
in and actually read one of my poems. The first poem I ever did was an erotic poem. So that's how I end up, sticking with that. Although I do various amount of poetry, I end up starting with that. But so ever since then, I've been there, stuck there.
Well, now you mentioned something about nerves. Now you've been in the game forever, right? And is there a time that you still get up there and what types of audiences make you a little edgy?
Well, actually, for me, when people ask me that question, I tell them I divorced the audience and I married the stage.
Whoa, wait,
I like that.
wait.
I like that.
Wait.
Mhm.
I just need that to process.
Mm-hmm.
You divorced the audience.
And married the
Married
stage.
the
Without even knowing, I know exactly what she's talking about. And that's going to help me.
A lot of times.
That's going to help me on radio.
Sometimes you have to disconnect and just be right there with the poem.
Awesome. What about on the radio?
Radio, I never had a problem with speaking, and that's why that came a little natural.
Okay,
Because
well,
I speak on a lot of things. So.
I'm getting some signals that we need to go pay some bills.
Okay.
We're in the studio with Nubian Speaking and Rebecca Butterfly Bonds, and when we get back, we're gonna talk a little bit about their brand and their business, and we're gonna get into their business. Yeah, you understand? let's go ahead and pay some bills. You're listening to Sean, and in the Black Radio, we'll be right back.
It's a new wave, not going back. Living, it's a new wave, not going back. Living in the black.
Welcome back. You're listening to In the Black Radio, your personal entrepreneurial and small business hotspot. Be sure to plug in. Listen, each and every Wednesday we're here, right here, WMBM, 4 p.m. Listen, we're in the studio with Nubian Speaking and Rebecca Butterfly Vaughn. We're going to continue our conversation, but there's a, what happened? What you like?
I like how you do your little swerve.
Oh, you like the little thing? They got to go onto the YouTube channel to see that. They got to go to the YouTube channel to see that. Swerve. So before we get back and get into their business, we have some questions from social media and all company places. We just compiled it. Judy, can you give us what those questions are?
Yes, this question is for Rebecca Butterfly Bonds, and there's a question out there. The listeners want to know where were you and how did you feel when you got the news of your Grammy nomination?
Well, I was actually home, and actually it's so many stipulations with that, because that year they had more nomination categories than they had ever had in the history of the Grammys. So what happened was they actually grouped folktale along with spoken word.
Wow.
So it was, and one thing about the Grammys, it's more on voting. It's almost like an internal fraternity for artists. Like if you've ever heard India Ari do her blast on it and her dislikes towards it or whatever the case may be. So it's a stipulation, whereas nomination really, at one point I was a nominee and nominated, but then once they grouped the folktale, it pushed me out.
Right.
But I did receive, the card and the notification and all that kind of stuff in the mail. So, and it was one of those experiences that I'm really more into my art. I'm not big on the awards and the plaques and all of this kind of stuff. I'm more that this is a gift that God has given me. I have a purpose, I have a mission. I'm more into uplifting and showing people that we're all reflections of each other to follow your dreams.
I have a question here for Nubian Speaking.
Yes, sir.
This actually is coming from Facebook.
Oh, jeez.
What?
My favorite people.
They're your friends.
Are there any complications with you doing erotic poetry and with the other poets? Do they treat you any differently because your stuff is erotic? And, yeah.
No. I started out at the beginning where there were not that many doing erotic poetry. So when I came out, I was like, wow, this girl is just speaking this. But I like to tell people I am my poetry. I can only speak by experiences. So it comes natural for me to go ahead and spit that kind of stuff out.
So who has my calendar? I'm gonna need to know where.
I need that slow groove now. Can you give me the slow jam now? Come on, man.
The only flack I may get is some that have come out, that will say, okay, I can do that. And then they come out and try to do an erotic poem. And like I said, you have to be your poem.
I got you. Is this an industry that is better if you're male?
What do you mean?
Meaning, if I was a male, would I be more likely to succeed than a woman in this industry, or does it matter?
Ooh.
Actually, to be honest, it doesn't matter, but sometimes it does. So it's like the old saying that 6 in one hand, half a dozen in the other, 50-50 split. It depends on the night. It depends on who that male poet is, and your audience. And I know from my experiences that there have been times where I've gone out to an open mic and myself and another male poet were both the feature. And we pretty much equally sold the same amount of CDs. Then there's been times I've gone out and there were a male and female poet, and that female poet would sell more CDs than the male. Because in all honesty, at the end of the night, it's your delivery
It's that
and
day.
the subject matters that
Gotcha.
you spoke on.
But there are not a lot of men that come out to the spot, so sometimes, like she said, depends on that night. If
You
you
might
got
have
an
edge.
audience, you know,
have
full
edge.
of women, they're trying to check for the male poets.
But I think when it comes to art, I think it's kind of with anything that people learn, it's kind of like a social emotional
Right.
connection. If their first exposure to poetry was a negative one, then that's going to stick with you. Same thing happens with math or science or what have you.
Once they
I can
come out, they're
piggyback
like,
on
oh,
what you
okay.
just said. When I released my first album, this was in 2002. I so love this guy. Now I do. There's a gentleman by the name of Maurice Gardner.
Maurice Gardner.
Yes, very talented brother. So anyway, my first encounter with him was at a fashion show that he did at the James L. Knight Center. And I was actually on the program via, a close relative of his, Terrence. So he didn't hear me perform because, he was backstage getting the models ready. So at the end of the night, I'm outside in the lobby and I have my CD set up. At that time, I had 2 CDs out. So they're walking out and Terrence says, "Oh, Maurice, I want you to meet Butterfly. She's a poet." I ain't into no blah, blah, blah poetry.
Ooh.
And, and walked off.
Oh.
So I say, wait a minute. I say, hold up, brother. I say, come here. I say, I'm going to give you my CD on GP, pro bono.
Right.
I say, if you like it, cool. If not, trash it. I'll never know.
Right.
A month later, I get an email from him. I open it up, and he says, "Please accept my apology." He said, "I listened to your CD, and it was a breath of fresh air." He said the reason why he reacted the way he did is because back at home, when he would go out to the open mic venues, the poets would scream and yell their poetry, and his mind state as he's sitting in the audience would be, why is he or she yelling? You don't know me. What did I do to you?
Wow.
So it turned him off.
Wow. So perception could have a lot to do with this.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
past experiences.
Well, any
can be
experience,
massive.
I think, I don't want to get into a diatribe here, but I think our society, specifically our society, does a terrible job of exposing young people to the arts of all forms.
Yes, they do.
Absolutely right.
And so if you grow up in an area where if you're a poet, then you're a sissy,
Right.
then I don't want to be a poet, and I don't want to go to poetry.
Nice.
Same thing with dancers,
Yeah.
male dancers.
Yeah.
Same
Male
thing
dancers,
with
right.
artists of
Yeah.
all forms,
Yes.
musicians, the
Yes.
symphony, the ballet.
Yes.
And it walks across gender and it walks across race. If you take a child and you expose them to the arts at a very young age, and they understand it, and you explain it to them like they are an adult because they got a great brain on their shoulders. God gave them lots of gray matter in there that's just a big sponge, better than yours. They're going to see the beauty in that.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
It's a new wave, not going back. Living here, it's a new wave, not going back. Living here in the
Tom, but let's just look at these brands. We had a conversation earlier, and we were talking about what marketing is.
Sure.
And I just want to, again, we're not going to solve any problems today because that's not what this show is for. But we do want to, I do want to take that brand conversation and dilute it so that we make sense to the individual entrepreneur.
Sure,
So
but I want to make sure that I point out that this might be apples and oranges for some of
It
your
ab-
listeners because
it absolutely is.
artist as brand
Absolutely.
is a lot different than
Got it.
company
And
as
that's the
brand.
reason. And that's the reason why I had them on, because what I want to do is this is a great segue to that realtor, that insurance agent. You are your brand.
Right.
See, they'll get that. I won't get any flack from them.
Right.
But if I have a mortgage broker sitting in front of me, he's going to give me a rundown of all of the listing services that he can do. Oh, I can close on a mortgage, and I can do this, and I can do this. No. First, tell me who you are and why I should be doing business with
What
you.
what are your core values and who are you? This is why I
There
say
you
in
go.
a branding conversation, write a character sketch. Make your company into a character and write its attributes and write that character
Okay.
as the truest character you know, and then move on. Now, as somebody who works for the company, you carry that brand.
Right, absolutely. Now, I want Lo to get in here, squeeze in here, grab that mic, and then I want you guys to talk to me about your brand, briefly about your brand. Why should I come see you as opposed to go to the football game or go see another poet? Okay? We can start with you, Ms. Nubian speaking.
Ooh, I am a sex therapist as well as a poet. And, I have the talk, radio, internet show that I have.
Plug it, baby.
It is called, it's on yourpartner.com radio, and it's called Sex and Relationships, and it's every Wednesday night at 9 o'clock. With me as your host, I do have co-host Anthony, and I do have guests that's in there.
Okay.
Me as a poet, I'm going to give the people all me, which is natural.
Okay.
There's no sugarcoating, there's none of that. I do erotic poetry, but I do all types of poetry, and I need to let them know
That's
that
good.
this is not just me.
Mainly my thing is, I'm more of a motivational type poet. I'm definitely a tribute type poet. I am that poet that I make you feel what I'm saying. And in all honesty, I am that poet that makes you like poetry if you didn't like it before or understand it.
You have
And brand wise, I have to share this because it is important that who are you, who knows you.
That's good. Now, I asked Lo to come to the mic because Lo is a comedian, and she's working on her brand. and one of the things that I want to make very clear here today is that your calling card needs to be short. It can't. You might not have an hour to. You know what I mean?
Right,
This is what I do, and that's what I don't do, and this is what I do.
Yeah.
You got to have a tagline that says it all.
Right.
And the exercise that Tom said to do earlier about that, creating that character says a lot, because then everything is in front of you and you can narrow that down to one or two words or maybe a sentence or paragraph. Now, if you have more time, then you can go ahead and flesh it out. But a lot of, time is of the essence, okay? So you have any questions, Lo, to ask as it relates to branding and making sure that,
Well, yes, when it relates to branding, because I know you guys are such a close network, and with the Literary Cafe and all of that, how did you maintain that closeness with the Paxson of Will? Because I see you guys in numbers everywhere. Y'all support each other, and I love it.
In the beginning, it was a little hard.
Yeah.
Because it came to a shock to everyone.
Right.
But we were family.
Right.
That we reside there. We almost like grew up there. We did what do we call
Like
it?
I'm an original.
Yes,
Literary
she's
Cafe.
an original.
I
came
was there
along
when
later.
when it first started, and literally it was only 5 of us for about 2 months.
So when I came in, I saw that. I saw the family. I saw the love, the diversity of each poet and how they present themselves. We stay in contact. We make sure we try to deliver what the people came to hear, and that's good poetry. And I like South Florida for that, because we have a diverse of poets that are awesome, spoken word artists that are awesome, and I am happy to know them. I'm glad, I'm blessed to know them.
well, both of you guys obviously had a relationship with Will. And my question is, how did his passing impact the industry in South Florida? Negatively, positive? Well, I'm sure that
Well,
it's probably
definitely not on a negative part.
Definitely.
It impacted because, like, they came in on the back end of Will. I watched him grow. I watched him from when he first started, and he was on the mic, and we were at Power Studios at the time. It was an open mic that used to take place, and me and a young lady were up at the back, and we were like, what is that rattling noise? And come to find out, it was Will's paper shaking in the microphone
When he
when he first started. So yeah, because he came on the scene in 2001. So I watched him become who he became, whereas Nubian and Camellia Red Riding Hood and Youngster, they came in on the back end, those last 5 years of his career. And so it was a hard impact, because his mission and his state of mind was to make poets be recognized and
Exactly.
respected. Like,
And I
honestly,
respect him for
me
that.
and him would bump heads. Because me personally, I never made money the issue in being a poet. I'm one that I'm about resume. Because at the end of the day, you don't care what I got in my bank account. You want to be able that if somebody referred me to you, but you want confirmation, you want that you can call him, mention my name, and he says, oh yes, put her on your show.
Right.
So we would bump heads a lot where he would be like, man, Butterfly, you out here messing it up for us poets because you always
Will is
doing
very
stuff pro
passionate about
bono. And I used to tell him, I say, Will, what works for me may not work for you.
Right.
So that's the essence of it. That's one of those things you have to decide when you start thinking about what your brand is. You have to decide, everybody who has a business, whether it's an individual or an artist, whether they are a creative or an analytic, has to figure out their way of keeping score. Some people keep score through dollars, some people
Right.
keep score through awards, some people keep score through referrals, some people keep score through the good they do in the universe.
Right.
And you have to decide that going in what your brand is going to be, and it's a key component.
That
Yes,
plan,
definitely.
that plan that you're
12
gonna create,
years.
that plan that you're gonna create, once you create your brand and you start to mobilize it, the goals that you set are gonna dictate what you do for pro bono and what you do for, like, and
Exactly.
I kinda had that conversation last week. I was trying to get into it a little bit last week with the hip hop artists, because, you know, yeah, I do endorse doing some free gigs, but you definitely have to pick and choose based on
Exactly.
your portfolio,
Exactly.
based on your
I
needs.
started
to learn
doing,
that.
I started doing, my first wedding was 10 years ago. And the reason I ended up with that wedding is because the poet that the couple was actually referred to was like, no, you don't meet my budget, but I know a poet who will.
Oh,
So that poet allowed for me to be blessed for these last 10 years,
Gotcha.
because that
To do
one
different
wedding
events.
in February, I ended up doing 3 more that year, but from 2005 to 2009, I was doing 15 to 20 weddings a year.
And then this brings up another point about brand, is your brand is created as much by the jobs you turn down.
That's right.
that's good. Yeah,
Yes.
That's
yeah.
right.
All right, guys, I'm totally out of time, but I need last comments. Wrap it up. Anything you want to say? I know you want to plug the show tonight.
Oh, again, tonight, Sex and Relationships on yourpartner.com. You can download a free app, Live 365. My name is Nubian Speaking. Please tune in tonight, 9 p.m. Let's talk sex.
Okay.
Baby.
Just love what you do what you do you, be you, and stay true.
Listen, listen, you can't top that. What I want to do, you know, I'm just letting you guys hang out for a little bit because I want to talk a little about next week. We have a big show next week, which we're going to be focusing on women and wealth. Now,
It's a new wave, not going back. Living, it's a new wave,